Something has just happened in Venezuela that many are observing, yet few realize what it truly means. The fall of Nicolás Maduro is not just another political shift in South America. It is a prophetic sign that connects directly to the Book of Revelation and the emergence of a global system of control. Currently, international forces are making moves on the Venezuelan chessboard, while Russia, China, and Iran watch every move by the United States. Venezuelan oil, the largest in the world, is at the center of a dispute that goes far beyond economics. What does the Bible reveal about nations collapsing before the end? Why is Venezuela prophetically connected to events that will shake the entire world? Prepare yourself, because what you are about to discover will completely change your view of the end times. Venezuela today is not just a country in crisis. It is a prophetic laboratory for what has been described as the emergence of systems that precede the global government of the Antichrist. Nicolás Maduro governed a nation that should have been the richest in South America, but which became a symbol of economic collapse, famine, and mass exodus. More than 7 million Venezuelans have fled the country since 2014, the largest migration crisis in the modern history of the Western Hemisphere. But why does this matter prophetically? The Bible describes a statue with feet of iron mixed with clay, representing kingdoms that appear strong but are internally fragile. Venezuela today is exactly that. With the world's largest oil reserves, 303 billion barrels, the country should be a superpower. However, corruption, authoritarianism, and dependence on foreign powers have transformed this wealth into a curse. Maduro maintains power through alliances with Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba, receiving military, technological, and economic support from these nations. The Book of Revelation, chapter 6, describes the black horse of famine, where a measure of wheat costs a day's wages. In Venezuela, this is already a reality. Hyperinflation has destroyed the national currency, forcing millions to depend on international remittances and cryptocurrencies to survive. Venezuelan citizens are using paper banknotes to make handicrafts, as they are almost worthless. This collapse is not isolated. It is part of a global pattern preparing nations to accept a centralized system of control. The prophet Daniel received specific visions about how the world would be reorganized before the return of Christ. In Daniel chapter 7 verse 23, the angel explains that the fourth beast will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. Historically, this beast represents the Roman Empire and its successors, but the prophecy goes beyond ancient history. It points to a final system that will consume entire nations. Venezuela is being devoured at this very moment. Its sovereignty has been fragmented among rival powers. Russia has installed military bases and S-300 air defense systems on Venezuelan territory. China has invested over $60 billion in Venezuelan infrastructure and oil, becoming the country's largest external creditor. Iran has sent oil tankers, technology, and military advisors to help Maduro circumvent international sanctions. Cuba provides intelligence and personal security to the regime. This model of multiple dependencies is no coincidence. This is exactly what the Bible describes as the preparatory phase for global government. Revelation chapter 13 verse 7 says that the Antichrist has been given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. How will this happen? Through the intentional collapse of national economies, creating hopelessness that leads entire populations to accept any system that promises stability. Venezuela is testing this model. When a nation loses its food, energy, and monetary autonomy, it becomes completely controllable, and this pattern is spreading. Experts in geopolitics and international intelligence confirm that the capture of Nicolás Maduro will trigger a chain reaction that few are prepared to face. Venezuela is not just another unstable Latin American country. It is a strategic piece in a much larger prophetic and political game. With the confirmation of the dictator's capture and imprisonment, 4 global powers will suffer immediate catastrophic losses. Russia would lose its main military base of operations in South America, including strategic access to the Caribbean and naval supply routes. China would see $60 billion in investments evaporate, in addition to losing control over critical oil reserves. Iran would be deprived of its closest ally in the Western Hemisphere, a tool used to circumvent sanctions and project influence. Cuba would face the definitive collapse of its communist regime, as it depends almost entirely on subsidized Venezuelan oil. But there is something deeper happening. Revelation chapter 6 verse 4 presents the second horseman, riding a red horse, who was given power to take peace from the earth, so that men would kill one another. Maduro's downfall will not bring immediate peace to Venezuela. On the contrary, analysts predict civil war, territorial fragmentation, and an even greater explosion of refugees crossing borders. This chaos will not be localized. It will be regional, then hemispheric, and finally global, exactly as the prophecies describe. Many focus exclusively on Israel, Europe, and the Middle East when studying prophecy. But South America is being quietly prepared for a crucial role in the last days. Daniel chapter 2 verse 43 describes mixed kingdoms, which attempt to unite through human alliances, but do not truly mix, like iron and clay. South America today is exactly that. Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile all oscillate politically between ideological extremes, creating chronic instability. Radical left-wing governments like Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba form alliances with Russia, China, and Iran. Right-wing governments like El Salvador, under Nayib Bukele, adopt maximum security models that impress the world, but concentrate power in an unprecedented way. Bukele transformed El Salvador from the most violent country in the world into one of the safest, imprisoning over 75,000 gang members in mega prisons. He is celebrated globally as an example of restored order. But here is the prophetic question. Systems that function through total control, mass surveillance, and centralization of power are exactly what Revelation chapter 13 describes. Bukele is not the Antichrist, but it demonstrates how populations desperate for security will accept any leader who promises order, even if it means giving up fundamental freedoms. This is due to decades of governments that promoted drug trafficking and provisional release for criminals and delinquents. Some South American governments adopt these methods, even attempting to legalize the sale of cocaine and synthetic drugs. South America is being conditioned to accept strong leaders, centralized systems, and authoritarian solutions in the future in order to combat these problems. When the true global leader emerges, this continent will be ready to accept him. Ezekiel chapter 38 describes a coalition led by Gog from the land of Magog, prince of Meshech and Tubal. The prophecy lists specific allies: Persia, which is modern-day Iran, Kush and Put, regions of Africa, and Gomer and Togarmah, associated with Turkey and regions to the north. This coalition will attack Israel in the last days, coming from the northern regions. Today, this coalition is not theory. It is documented geopolitical reality. Russia, Iran, and China form a strategic axis that openly challenges Western hegemony. Russia provides advanced military technology, S-400 missile systems to Iran, and China Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets, and diplomatic support at the United Nations. China offers massive financing, infrastructure through the Belt and Road Initiative, and buys oil and gas from these nations under Western sanctions. Iran connects the axis directly to the Middle East, providing proxy militias in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. And all three are deeply involved in Venezuela. It's no coincidence. It's prophetic strategy. Venezuela serves as a bridge between East and West, allowing these powers to project power into the United States' backyard. With Maduro's recent fall, this balance will be broken, forcing these nations to react militarily or economically. Revelation chapter 9 verse 16 mentions an army of 200 million coming from the east. Only China has the demographic and military capacity to mobilize such a force. The Russia-China-Iran triad is preparing. Here is a question that has troubled prophecy scholars for decades. Why is the United States, the greatest military and economic superpower in history, not clearly mentioned in Revelation? Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation speak of ancient empires, of Europe as the successor to Rome, of the Middle East, of Asia, and even of Africa. But there is no direct mention of America. There are three prophetic possibilities. First, the United States will be so integrated into the European and Western system that it will be included in the descriptions of the revived Roman Empire in Daniel chapter 7. Second, the United States will suffer economic collapse, internal division, or a devastating attack that will remove it from the global stage before the period of the Great Tribulation. Third, the United States will be the Babylon mentioned in Revelation chapters 17 and 18, the great city that economically dominates the world and will be destroyed in an hour. The Venezuelan situation has long exposed American fragility. Even with massive sanctions, economic blockades, and support for the opposition, the United States took more than a decade to remove Maduro from power. Russia, China, and Iran have simply bypassed American power all this time. But with recent events, we will be able to observe whether Washington will be able to control the Western Hemisphere alone. Donald Trump led the decisive action against Maduro, while former President Joe Biden only maintained sanctions but avoided direct confrontation. Now, in addition to Venezuela, the United States is focused on Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. But it is Venezuela that is the turning point for American influence. Controlling the oil may be the key for the United States to halt Chinese and Russian growth. Revelation chapter 6 verse 6 presents a frightening economic scene. A measure of wheat for a denarius, 3 measures of barley for a denarius, but do not harm the oil and the wine. This verse describes selective scarcity, where basic foodstuffs are expensive, but certain resources are protected. In the modern context, oil is the oil of the last days. Venezuela possesses 303 billion barrels of proven oil, more than Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and Russia. But under Maduro, production has fallen from 3 million barrels per day to less than 700,000. The oil infrastructure is in ruins. The refineries have closed. Skilled workers have fled the country. And yet, Venezuelan oil is the most coveted prize in global geopolitics. China buys Venezuelan oil at huge discounts, breaking American sanctions. Iran sends technicians and equipment to reactivate destroyed refineries. Russia operates directly in Venezuelan oil fields through the state-owned company Rosneft. India, surprisingly, has become one of the largest buyers of Venezuelan oil, refining and reselling it globally. In this context, Brazil, currently governed by a left-wing government, has close ties to the Venezuelan dictatorship, which could also impact negotiations with the United States. Brazil has recently received American sanctions due to judicial abuses and political persecution. Several overpriced refineries and projects were carried out in Venezuela with financial support from Brazil, which in turn had to foot the bill for billions of dollars owed by the Maduro dictatorship. Why does this matter prophetically? Because controlling power, controlling energy, and controlling the population is controlling nations. Revelation chapter 13 verse 17 says that no one will be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast. How will this work? Through the control of essential resources, food, water, and energy, whoever controls the oil controls entire economies. The battle for Venezuela is, in fact, a battle for the power to determine who will have access to the resources necessary to survive. Now that you understand the geopolitical and prophetic connections of Venezuela, you need to know how this relates to the global system of control described in Revelation. So take advantage of this opportunity and subscribe to the channel now to continue receiving revelations that connect biblical prophecy with current events that all media outlets ignore. Click the subscribe button, activate the bell, because what comes next may be what triggers a new global crisis. Venezuela was the first country in South America to launch a national digital currency controlled by the government, the petro, in 2018. Presented as a solution to hyperinflation and sanctions, the petro is actually an instrument of total surveillance and control. Every transaction is tracked. The government can freeze funds instantly. Citizens who oppose the regime have their wallets blocked. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17 describe a system where everyone receives a mark on their right hand or forehead, without which no one can buy or sell. The technology for this already exists. It doesn't have to be a literal chip. It could be a QR code, a biometric digital wallet, or a mandatory identification app. Even knowing that the real meaning of the mark on the hand and forehead is to not surrender your mind and your work to the world, we know that this control has a total impact on the prophecies of the end times. China has already implemented this system with the social credit score, where behavior is digitally monitored and citizens lose access to services if they disobey government rules. Venezuela is testing this model on a smaller scale. India launched Aadhaar, a biometric system that connects digital identity to everything: banks, healthcare, taxes. One of the biggest mistakes Christians make when studying prophecy is imagining the Antichrist as an obvious tyrant, a cruel dictator whom everyone will immediately recognize as evil. But the Bible never describes the Antichrist in that way. Paul, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 9 and 10, says that the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish. Deception, not by force. The Antichrist will conquer through persuasion, through the appearance of wisdom, through the promise of peace and prosperity. Daniel chapter 8 verse 25 says that he will destroy many who live carelessly. How? By creating false security. People will trust him because he will appear to have the answers to all global problems. Look at the world today. Economic crises, wars, epidemics, climate disasters, the collapse of nations like Venezuela. Humanity is tired, desperate, ready to follow any leader who promises order. When the population is suffocatingly desperate for security, it accepts the concentration of power, total surveillance, and the reduction of civil liberties. The true Antichrist will emerge in a moment of global chaos, offering a perfect plan: economic, political, and even spiritual. He will unite religions under a discourse of tolerance. He will resolve international conflicts with impressive diplomacy. He will implement technology that seems miraculous, and billions will follow him willingly without realizing they are worshipping the beast. While Venezuela collapses and global powers play geopolitical chess, there is one place in the world that remains the absolute prophetic center of everything: Jerusalem. Jesus said in Luke chapter 21 verse 24, that Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. That time is rapidly drawing to a close. Israel is at the center of unprecedented tensions. Iran threatens to destroy the Jewish state openly, developing nuclear capabilities while funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and militias in Iraq and Syria. Russia maintains a military presence in Syria, just kilometers from the Israeli border. Turkey, under Erdogan, has adopted increasingly anti-Israel rhetoric, promoting radical political Islam. At the same time, the Abraham Accords, initiated under Donald Trump in 2020, normalized relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. Saudi Arabia is negotiating official recognition of Israel in exchange for American military technology and guarantees. But all of this is built on prophetic sand. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 prophesies that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, that is, 7 years. But in the middle of the week, he will break the covenant, interrupt sacrifices in the temple, and establish the abomination of desolation. This means that Israel will rebuild the third temple, restart sacrifices, and the Antichrist will initially support this, deceiving Jews and Christians, until he betrays them all. While you watch the crises in Venezuela, know that everything is connected to Jerusalem. Daniel chapter 2 describes a statue representing successive empires. Head of gold, Babylon; chest and arms of silver, Medo-Persia; belly and thighs of bronze, Greece; legs of iron, Rome. But the feet are of iron mixed with clay, representing a weak and fragmented final version of the Roman Empire. Revelation chapter 13 speaks of a beast with 10 horns, symbolizing 10 kings who will give power to the Antichrist. The European Union today is the direct heir of the Roman Empire, geographically, culturally, and politically. It began as an economic alliance after World War II, the European coal and steel community, but evolved into a political superstructure with a parliament, a single currency, the euro, supranational laws, and a developing unified army. Currently, 27 nations comprise the EU, but the prophecy speaks of 10 kings, 10 centers of power. This suggests a future consolidation, where European regional blocs will give power to a centralized leader. Figures like Emmanuel Macron of France, Giorgia Meloni of Italy, or the future German Chancellor could play a role in this system. Europe faces multiple crises: economic, with unsustainable debt; energy, dependent on Russia; migratory, with millions of refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, and Africa; and an identity crisis, with the rise of nationalism and simultaneous Islamization. These crises will create a demand for a strong, charismatic leader capable of uniting a fragmented continent. Daniel chapter 7 verse 8 describes a small horn growing among 10 horns, uprooting 3 others. This leader will emerge from within the European system, not as an external invader, but by consolidating power through alliance, not war. Ezekiel chapter 38 mentions Cush and Put as allies in the coalition of Gog and Magog. Cush corresponds to Ethiopia and regions of northeastern Africa, while Put is associated with Libya and North Africa. This means that Africa will play a key role in the end times, something that many Western scholars completely ignore. Africa today is under increasing Chinese influence, which has invested over $1 trillion in infrastructure since 2000, building ports, railways, highways, and telecommunications networks. China controls the mining of cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements essential for modern technology. Russia supplies weapons and military training to dozens of African regimes. Turkey expands its influence through mosques, Islamic schools, and trade agreements. Meanwhile, African nations face chronic instability. Military coups have erupted in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Gabon, and Sudan. Islamic terrorism from Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and the Islamic State devastates entire communities. Famine, extreme poverty, and diseases like malaria, Ebola, and AIDS continue to kill millions. Revelation chapter 6 verse 8 describes the fourth horseman, death, followed by hell, with power over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword, famine, plague, and wild beasts. Africa is already living this reality. But prophetically, the continent will be militarily mobilized in the final war against Israel, proving that even seemingly marginal regions have a role in God's plan. Nothing happens by chance. Every continent, every nation, every crisis is connected to the divine prophetic calendar. China is at the forefront of developing AGI, artificial general intelligence, a system capable of reasoning, learning, and adapting on its own. Unlike narrow AI used in applications, AGI can think across all domains simultaneously. China has publicly declared AI dominance a strategic national priority, investing billions annually. Why does this matter prophetically? Because Revelation describes a centralized, efficient, and global system capable of monitoring every person, every transaction, every movement, and AGI makes this possible. China already operates mass surveillance with facial recognition, behavioral tracking, and social credit scoring. Imagine this amplified by an intelligence that never sleeps, never forgets, never hesitates. This technology could manage the global economy in real time, denying access to those who do not comply with the rules. It doesn't have to be a physical chip. It could be a biometric digital identity integrated into smartphones, digital wallets, and banking systems. Technology is not neutral. In the right hands, it can be a tool for freedom. In the wrong hands, it becomes an instrument of total enslavement. And we are willingly handing over this power. Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 and 5, "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many." The greatest danger of the last days is not physical persecution, but spiritual deception. False Christs, false prophets, false teachings that seem biblical but deny fundamental truths. Today, mega churches teach prosperity without holiness, blessings without obedience, heaven without repentance. Charismatic leaders perform impressive signs and wonders, but their lives contradict the fruit of the Spirit. Paul warned in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 13 to 15 that false apostles masquerade as apostles of Christ because Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Ecumenism is growing rapidly, a movement that unites all religions under the banner of tolerance and peace. The Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi brings together a mosque, synagogue, and church, literally under one roof, symbolizing unity between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It sounds beautiful, but it denies the exclusivity of Christ. Jesus said in John chapter 14, verse 6, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Revelation chapter 17 describes a religious prostitute, the mystery of Babylon, the mother of harlots, riding on a beast, representing an apostate religious system that collaborates with the political power of the Antichrist. The true church will be persecuted, but the false church will prosper, offering spirituality without the cross, worship without transformation, religion without Jesus. Remain faithful to the Word of God and not to human traditions or emotional experiences. Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 to 15, describes the white throne, the final judgment where all the dead will appear before God. Books will be opened, including the book of life. Whoever is not found written in the book of life will be thrown into the lake of fire. This is not symbolic language, it is a literal warning. Jesus made it clear in Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 to 23, that not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, "Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, drive out demons, and perform miracles?" Jesus will reply, "I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers." Knowing about Jesus does not save. Knowing Jesus personally, through an intimate relationship based on obedience and faith, is what saves. Romans chapter 10 verse 9 declares, "If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved." Salvation does not come through works, religions, rituals, or human morality. It comes exclusively through God's grace, through faith in Jesus Christ. Ephesians chapter 2 verses 8 and 9 confirm, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, so that no one may boast." While there is time, while there is breath, while Christ has not yet returned, there is hope. Repent and believe in the gospel. The arrest or downfall of Nicolás Maduro is not just political news. It is a prophetic sign connected to Daniel, Revelation, and rapidly converging global events. Venezuela exposes the fragility of nations, the ambition of global powers, and the preparation for a centralized system of control described in the scriptures. Russia, China, Iran, the United States, Europe, South America, Africa, the Middle East. Everything is interconnected. Oil, technology, digital currencies, mass surveillance, false peace, spiritual deception, everything points in the same direction. The last days are closer than we imagine. But the most important question is not when Christ will return, but whether you are prepared. Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 44, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord is coming." Don't let the world deceive you with empty promises of security, prosperity, and peace without God. Seek Jesus Christ now while there is still time. Because when the final sign is fulfilled, when the last trumpet sounds, it will be too late to choose. If this video has opened your eyes to prophetic truth, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with those you love. Time is running out. Christ's return is near. Are you ready?